Okay, so have you ever like stood there in the wine aisle, just completely lost, like frantically Googling, what does Cabernet Sauvignon even taste like? Anyone?
Or maybe you're more of a coffee person, but you're still buying the pre-ground stuff
Oh, yeah.
because, the world of like burr grinders and pour overs,
It's intimidating.
it feels like a secret society.
Right.
You're not alone.
You are so not alone. And that's exactly why we're doing this deep dive today
Yes.
into the world of wine and coffee appreciation. And by the end of this, you'll be like decoding those labels like a pro.
Right.
Impressing your friends with your,
Your tasting skills.
yeah, your tasting skills. But enjoying those delicious sips even more.
Absolutely. Think of this as your crash course in everything.
Yeah.
From the ancient origins of these drinks
Oh, I love it.
to the subtle art of pairing a bold Cabernet with your next steak dinner.
Yes. We've got your back, even if right now you can't tell a Chardonnay from a Sauvignon Blanc.
That's right.
But you will by the end of this.
Yeah.
We're going way beyond the basics here, folks. We've got 2 amazing sources packed with knowledge. We have a 20-chapter guide that honestly, it reads like a wine and coffee Bible.
It really does.
It's incredible. And then we have a podcast episode script
Oh, fun.
that's going to spill all the secrets of the pros.
All the secrets.
All the secrets. So buckle up because we're about to transform you from a casual sipper to a confident connoisseur.
Yes, but before we get ahead of ourselves,
Yes.
let's remember that this deep dive is all about personal exploration and enjoyment. It's not about memorizing all those fancy terms or becoming like a certified sommelier overnight. It's about, understanding what you like and, feeling empowered to choose and savor your wine and coffee with confidence.
Yes, I love that. Okay, so shall we kick things off with a little history lesson?
Let's do it.
These are beverages. We're talking about beverages that have been enjoyed for centuries, even millennia.
I know, it's incredible.
I'm betting there's some pretty wild stories behind those cups and glasses.
Oh, absolutely. Did you know that winemaking dates back over 8,000 years?
Get out.
Yeah. Archaeologists have actually found evidence of wine production in the Caucasus region, which is pretty mind-blowing when you think about it.
8,000 years. That's older than, written language.
It is.
No wonder wine is so deeply ingrained in so many cultures. I mean, it's been with us through thick and thin, from, ancient feasts to modern-day dinner parties.
Exactly. And it's just fascinating to see how it has evolved over time, spreading across continents, each region developing its own unique styles and traditions.
Yeah. We'll definitely be diving deeper into those regional variations later on because understanding the terroir, which is the unique environmental factors of a place.
It's so important.
It is key to appreciating the nuances of different wines.
It really is.
Okay. Terroir, mental note. I am already feeling smarter. But before we get too lost in the vineyards of Europe, let's hop over to the world of coffee.
Let's do it.
I am curious about its origin story.
Yeah.
Is it true that, it all started with some hyperactive goats?
Well, the legend says that, a goat herder in Ethiopia, he noticed that his goats were getting particularly frisky after munching on these berries from a certain tree.
Yeah.
Those berries, of course, contained coffee beans.
Of course.
And the rest, as they say, is history.
Okay, that's amazing. I mean, I knew coffee had a fascinating history, but frisky goats, that is a story I will not soon forget.
And it's incredible how coffee, like wine, has traveled the globe.
I know.
Cultures,
totally.
Shaping rituals along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about the, traditional coffee ceremonies.
Yes.
In places like Ethiopia and Turkey.
Absolutely.
Or the rise of coffee houses in Europe as, these centers of intellectual discussion and social gatherings. Coffee has always been more than just a beverage.
Oh, for sure.
It's a cultural touchstone, a catalyst for creativity, and let's be honest.
Yes.
A lifesaver on those early mornings.
A lifesaver.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Okay, so we've established that both wine and coffee have these rich, fascinating histories.
We have.
Which makes appreciating them even more rewarding. But let's be practical for a moment.
Okay.
Do we need to, build a wine cellar and invest in a professional espresso machine?
No, not at all.
To truly enjoy these beverages?
You can absolutely start your appreciation journey with just a few basic tools.
Yeah, okay.
For coffee, I would say that the most essential tool is a good burr grinder. Forget those blade grinders.
Okay.
Because they create inconsistent grinds, which leads to uneven extraction and ultimately a subpar cup of coffee.
Gotcha. Okay, a burr grinder. Noted. I've definitely been guilty of using pre-ground coffee.
Yeah.
But now I'm intrigued. What about brewing methods? I mean, I'm assuming we don't need to go full barista right away, do we?
Exactly. You can start really simple. A French press is a great entry-level brewing method.
Oh.
It's affordable, easy to use, produces a really rich, full-bodied cup.
Nice.
Or if you prefer something a little bit cleaner, brighter cup, you could try a pour-over dripper.
Okay.
Like a Hario V60.
See, this is why I love deep dives. I'm already learning so much. Okay, so coffee essentials,
Yeah.
burr grinder, French press, or pour over. Got it. What about wine? Do I need to, like, invest in one of those fancy corkscrews with, like, 100 moving parts?
Nope. A basic waiter's friend corkscrew will do the trick for most bottles.
Yeah.
And as for glassware, you don't need a separate glass for every type of wine.
Okay.
A versatile set of red and white wine glasses will serve you well. You can always add a decanter to your wish list later on.
Okay.
But it's not essential for beginners.
Okay, that's reassuring.
Yeah.
It sounds like I can start my wine and coffee journey without breaking the bank.
Yes.
But before I run off to the store, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Those sometimes intimidating flavor profiles.
Oh, yeah.
You know those descriptions on coffee bags and wine bottles that mention things like chocolatey notes or hints of blackberry? How do we even begin to decipher those?
Ah, yes. The language of flavor.
Yes.
It can seem a bit mysterious at first, but the key is to remember that tasting is a multi-sensory experience.
Okay.
It's not just about what you taste on your tongue, but also what you smell and feel in your mouth.
Okay, so we're engaging all of our senses here.
Yes.
But what exactly should we be looking for, rather smelling and tasting for?
Let's start with the fundamentals. Sweet, sour, bitter, salty, and umami.
Yeah.
These are the 5 basic tastes, and they're present in all food and beverages, including wine and coffee. Learning to recognize these basic tastes will help you build a foundation for understanding more complex flavors.
Okay, I think I can handle that. Sweet, sour, bitter, salty, umami. Got it. But then things get a bit more poetic, right? Like, what does it even mean when a wine is described as, like, earthy or oaky? I feel like I need a translator.
I hear you. Those descriptive terms can seem a bit abstract.
They do.
At first, but think of them as clues that point to the origin of the flavors and aromas.
Okay.
For example, earthy notes might come from the soil where the grapes were grown.
Oh, okay.
While, oaky flavors develop when wine is aged in oak barrels.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's like a detective game.
It is.
Trying to trace those flavors back to their source.
Exactly.
I'm into it.
Yeah.
But let's get specific. What are some common wine notes that even a beginner like me might be able to pick up on?
In wine, you might notice fruity aromas like berries, citrus, or stone fruit.
Okay.
You could also detect non-fruit aromas like herbs, spices, or even floral hints.
Oh, wow.
Red wines tend to have darker fruit flavors.
Okay.
While white wines often exhibit lighter, brighter fruit notes.
Okay, floral hints in wine. Sounds fancy. And what about coffee? What are some of those, like, telltale flavors that I should be on the lookout for?
Coffee often exhibits fruity, chocolatey, or nutty notes. Okay. Lighter roasts tend to have brighter, more acidic flavors.
Right.
While darker roasts can bring out those, chocolatey or smoky characteristics.
Yeah.
And don't forget about the aroma.
Yeah.
The way a coffee smells can tell you a lot about its flavor profile.
Okay, I'm taking notes here. But I have to admit, I'm a little worried about, those moments when I take a sip and I just think like, tastes like coffee, or, yep, that's definitely wine. How do I get past that initial deer in the headlights feeling?
That's completely normal. Developing your palate takes time and practice. The more you taste and pay attention to those subtle nuances, the more you'll start to recognize them. It's like learning a new language.
Right.
At first, it's all gibberish, but gradually you start to pick out words and phrases.
Totally.
Don't be afraid to start simple.
Okay.
Focus on identifying those broad categories of flavors. And most importantly, don't overthink it.
Yeah, I love that. It takes the pressure off and reminds me that this is all about enjoying the process.
It is.
Not becoming like a flavor detecting robot.
Right.
So we've talked about history.
We have.
We've got our essential tools, and we're starting to decode those flavor profiles.
Yes.
What's next on our wine and coffee adventure?
Well, now that we have a basic understanding of taste, it's time to tackle the often daunting task of choosing the right wine or coffee for you. Get ready to navigate the world of labels, regions, and personal preferences.
This is getting good. Okay, so we're back, and how do we actually choose the right wine or coffee for us? It's like, standing in front of that giant wall of cereal at the grocery store. Just
so many options.
Too many.
I know. Choice overload is real, especially when it comes to beverages with as much variety as wine and coffee.
Yes.
But don't worry, we're going to break it down.
Okay.
Make the process a lot less intimidating.
I'm all ears. Let's start with coffee. I know there are different types of beans, like Arabica and Robusta, but what else should I be considering when I'm, browsing those bags of coffee?
One of the most important things to look for is the roast date.
Okay.
Fresher coffee is always going to taste better, so try to find beans that have been roasted within the past couple of weeks.
Okay.
You'll notice a huge difference compared to those bags that have been sitting on the shelf for months.
So checking the roast date is like checking the expiration date on milk.
Exactly.
Got it. But what about all those other terms on the bag, like single origin, blend, light roast, dark roast? It's enough to make my head spin.
I know, it can be overwhelming.
It is.
But let's break it down.
Right.
Single origin coffees come from a specific geographic region, like Ethiopia or Colombia. They're kind of like the soloists of the coffee world, showcasing the unique flavor characteristics of their birthplace.
So single origin is all about expressing the terroir.
Yes.
That sense of place.
Exactly.
We were talking about earlier.
Exactly. And if you're feeling adventurous, single origins are a great way to explore the nuances of different growing regions.
Okay.
Blends, on the other hand, are like a coffee orchestra.
Oh, okay.
Combining beans from different origins to create a more balanced or complex flavor profile.
I love that analogy. So if I want to experience the pure, unadulterated essence of Kenyan coffee, I should go for a single origin. But if I want a more harmonious blend of flavors, a blend is the way to go.
Exactly. And then we have roast levels.
Yes.
Which play a huge role in the final flavor of the coffee. Lighter roasts tend to be brighter and more acidic, highlighting the bean's natural characteristics. Darker roasts are bolder and more robust, with those smoky, chocolatey, or even burnt notes that some people love.
So choosing a roast level is kind of like choosing a filter for a photo. Different roasts bring out different aspects of the bean's flavor.
That's a great way to think about it. And just like with photo filters, there's no right or wrong answer. It all comes down to your personal preference.
Okay, I'm starting to feel like I can actually hold my own in a coffee shop now.
Yes.
But before we move on to wine, is there anything else I should keep in mind when choosing coffee?
If ethical sourcing is important to you, look for certifications like Fair Trade or Direct Trade, which ensure fair prices for farmers and sustainable farming practices. You might also look for organic coffees, which are grown without the use of pesticides or herbicides.
Okay, so I'm checking the roast date, considering the origin, thinking about the roast level, and keeping an eye out for ethical certifications.
You got it.
I'm officially a coffee choosing pro.
You are.
Now, let's talk wine. Where do we even begin with this vast world of grapes and regions?
Wine can definitely seem intimidating. But just like with coffee, we can break it down into manageable chunks. First, let's talk about grape varieties. You're probably already familiar with some of the most popular ones, like Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc. But there are literally thousands of grape varietals out there.
Thousands. Okay, now I'm officially overwhelmed. How am I ever going to learn all that?
You don't have to. Start by exploring some of the most common varieties and see which ones you enjoy. Pay attention to the tasting notes. See if you gravitate towards lighter, crisper wines or bolder, more full-bodied ones. As you gain experience, you can start to branch out, explore less familiar grapes.
So if I enjoy a light, refreshing white wine, I might start with a Sauvignon Blanc or a Pinot Grigio. But if I prefer something rich and robust, I might try a Cabernet Sauvignon or a Syrah.
Exactly. And remember, there are no hard and fast rules here. It's all about experimenting and discovering what you like.
Totally. Okay.
Now, once you have a general sense of your preferred grape varieties, We can start talking about wine regions.
Okay, wine regions. I've heard of places like, Napa Valley, Bordeaux. But what makes them so special?
Wine regions are fascinating.
Yeah.
Because they demonstrate the concept of terroir in action.
Okay.
The climate, soil, and even the traditions of a specific region all contribute to the unique character of the wines produced there.
So a wine from, like, a sunny coastal region is going to taste different from a wine from, like, a mountainous region with a cooler climate.
Absolutely. And that's what makes exploring different wine regions so exciting.
Yep.
You can literally taste the influence of the environment in each sip.
This is blowing my mind. Okay, so grape varieties and wine regions are important.
Yes.
What else should I be thinking about when choosing a bottle of wine?
Well, you might also consider the style of the wine.
Yep.
Do you prefer crisp, dry wines or something more fruity and sweet? Do you like oaky flavors or something more earthy and mineral?
Okay, so it's all about matching the wine style to my, like, personal preferences.
Exactly.
But how do I even know what a wine style is without, like, tasting it first?
That's where those sometimes intimidating wine labels come in handy.
Okay.
They can provide valuable clues about the wine's flavor profile, origin, and even the winemaker's philosophy.
Okay, I'm ready to tackle those labels. But I have to admit, sometimes they feel like they're written in a secret code.
I know.
Where do I even begin?
Let's start with the basics.
Okay.
Most wine labels will list the grape variety, the region where the wine was produced, and the vintage, which is the year the grapes were harvested.
Okay. Grape variety, region, vintage.
You got it.
Got it. But what about all those other terms, like estate bottled or reserve? What do those even mean?
Those terms can give you insights into the quality and production methods of the wine. For example, estate bottled means the grapes were grown, vinified, and bottled at the same winery, often indicating a higher level of quality control.
So estate bottled is kind of like a seal of approval. Like, you're getting a wine that's been, like, carefully crafted from grape to bottle.
Exactly. And terms like reserve or special selection usually indicate wines that have been aged longer or made with grapes from the best vineyard sites.
Okay, I'm starting to feel like I'm actually understanding this.
Good.
But I have to confess, I still get a little intimidated when I walk into a wine shop.
I hear you.
Any tips for navigating that experience?
Don't be afraid to ask for help.
Okay.
Most wine shops have knowledgeable staff who are passionate about wine and happy to guide you towards something you'll enjoy.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
It's like having a personal wine shopper.
Yeah.
So we've covered sourcing, we've talked about storage. What other essential knowledge do we need to become true wine and coffee connoisseurs?
Well, we've discussed how to taste coffee and wine individually.
Yes.
But there's a whole world of flavor waiting to be discovered when you start pairing these beverages with food.
Ooh, pairing. Now we're talking. I love the idea of, like, creating the symphony of flavors.
Yes.
But honestly, I'm a bit clueless when it comes to pairing. Where do we even begin?
Pairing coffee and wine with food is all about finding harmonious combinations that enhance both the beverage and the dish. And just like with tasting, there are some guiding principles, but ultimately the best pairings are the ones that you enjoy the most.
Okay, so it's like a delicious adventure where we get to experiment and discover our own personal pairing preferences.
Exactly. Let's start with coffee. Have you ever thought about pairing your morning cup with something other than a donut or pastry?
I'll be honest, not really. But I'm open to expanding my coffee horizons. What kind of pairings are we talking about here?
Well, one approach is to look for complementary flavors.
Okay.
For example, the bitterness of a strong espresso can be beautifully balanced by the richness of dark chocolate.
Okay.
Or a smooth, nutty coffee might complement the creamy sweetness of a cheesecake.
Ooh, those sound amazing.
Yeah.
So it's about finding flavors that work together, like a dynamic duo on the taste buds.
Exactly. You don't want one flavor to overpower the other.
Right.
The goal is to create a harmonious balance where each element complements and enhances the other.
Totally.
And sometimes playing with contrasting flavors can create a delightful surprise. For example, a light acidic coffee can cut through the richness of a buttery pastry.
Oh, interesting.
Highlighting both flavors.
This is so cool. I'm starting to see how much potential there is for creativity in the world of coffee pairing.
Yeah.
What about wine? Are there any, like, hard and fast rules when it comes to pairing wine with food?
There are some classic guidelines, like pairing red wine with red meat and white wine with fish or chicken.
Right.
But even within those broad categories, there's a lot of room for experimentation and personal preference.
So it's not just about like matching the color of the wine to the protein on the plate.
Definitely not. The key is to think about the dominant flavors in both the food and the wine.
Okay.
For example, a rich, tannic Cabernet Sauvignon might pair well with a hearty steak, while a lighter Pinot Noir might be a better match for grilled salmon.
Okay, I'm starting to see the logic here, but I have to admit, sometimes those flavor combinations feel a bit like a guessing game.
Yeah.
Are there any tips for making, like, smarter pairing choices?
One helpful tip is to think about regional pairings.
Okay.
The idea is that what grows together goes together.
Oh, I like that.
So if you're enjoying Italian cuisine,
Yeah.
you might try pairing it with an Italian wine. Or if you're having a French meal, explore the wines of France.
That makes sense. It's like bringing a little bit of the region's terroir to the table.
Exactly.
Along with the food.
And don't forget about the sauce or seasoning.
Right.
A tangy tomato sauce might call for a crisp, acidic white wine like a Sauvignon Blanc.
Okay.
While a creamy Alfredo sauce might pair better with a richer, more buttery Chardonnay.
Okay, my taste buds are officially tingling. This is all so helpful. But what if I'm like at a restaurant staring at the wine list and I just can't decide? Any advice for those moments of wine-induced panic?
Don't be afraid to ask for recommendations. Sommeliers and wine stewards are trained to create harmonious pairings, and they're usually happy to offer suggestions based on your preferences in the menu.
That's a great point. It's like having a flavor expert on speed dial. Okay, I think we've officially covered all the bases today. From the history of coffee and wine,
I think so,
to tasting techniques, sourcing, storage, and even pairing. I feel like I could write a book now.
Well, maybe not a book.
Okay, maybe not a book.
But you've definitely gained a solid foundation of knowledge.
I have.
And remember, this is just the beginning of your journey into the fascinating world of wine and coffee appreciation.
Exactly. The world of flavor is vast and ever-evolving. There's always something new to discover, taste, and learn.
So keep exploring, keep experimenting, and most importantly, keep enjoying those delicious sips.
I love that. And a huge thank you to you for sharing your incredible knowledge and passion with us today.
It's been my pleasure.
And to all our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've learned a few things, maybe debunked some myths, and most importantly, feel inspired to embark on your own flavor adventures.
And remember, if you're eager to delve even deeper into this fascinating world of wine and coffee, you can find all of the sources we use for this episode on our Patreon page.
And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on future episodes.
Yes.
Until next time, happy sipping. And as always, remember, this is not professional advice. Just two friends sharing our love for all things coffee and wine. Cheers. We're back.
And ready to talk storage. Because even if we've picked out the perfect bottle of wine or bag of coffee beans, it's kind of all for nothing if we don't store them right at home.
Right. Oh, you are absolutely right. Proper storage is key to preserving the quality and freshness of both coffee and wine. It's like investing in a beautiful piece of art. You wouldn't just leave it out in the elements, would you? No, definitely not. Okay, so treat those beans and bottles with respect. Gotcha. So let's start with coffee. I'll admit I've always just kept my beans in, the bag they came in, tucked away in a cupboard. Am I, committing a coffee crime?
Well, it's not ideal.
Okay.
You see, coffee beans have these 4 arch enemies: air, moisture, heat, and light.
Okay.
Exposure to any of these can degrade the flavors and aromas, and you end up with a pretty dull, stale cup.
Gotcha. So it's like a coffee bean survival guide. Avoid air, moisture, heat, and light at all costs.
Exactly.
Okay. So what's the best way to keep those beans happy and fresh?
The key is to store them in an airtight container, preferably opaque, to block out light.
Okay.
And find a cool, dark place for that container, away from direct sunlight and any heat sources.
Okay. Airtight container, cool, dark place, check and check.
Yeah.
But what about freezing? Is that a friend or foe when it comes to coffee beans?
Freezing coffee beans can extend their shelf life, but it can also affect their flavor in subtle ways. If you do freeze them, make sure to thaw them completely before grinding and brewing.
Okay.
And try to avoid constantly freezing and thawing them.
Yeah.
As that can cause moisture to build up and, compromise the flavor.
Got it. So freeze only in emergencies and thaw with care. Now let's move on to wine. What are the, golden rules for keeping those bottles in tip-top shape?
Wine is a bit more delicate than coffee, and it requires specific storage conditions to age gracefully.
Okay.
The ideal temperature for storing wine is between 55 and 59 degrees Fahrenheit, with a humidity level around 60 to 70%.
Right, so my kitchen counter is basically like a wine torture chamber.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Fluctuations in temperature and humidity can damage wine over time, dulling the flavors and aromas.
Okay.
If you're serious about wine storage,
Yeah.
you might consider investing in a wine fridge or a dedicated wine cellar.
Okay, a wine cellar might be a little out of my league for now. But what if I just want to store like a few bottles for, special occasions? Are there any practical solutions for us non-sommelier?
Absolutely. If you don't have a dedicated wine storage space,
Yeah.
a cool, dark closet or pantry can work in a pinch.
Okay.
And for corked bottles, remember to store them on their sides so the cork stays moist and it prevents air from getting in.
Oh, that's a good tip. I've definitely been guilty of storing my wine bottles upright.
Yeah.
But from now on, they're going on their sides. But what about open bottles? What's the best way to keep like leftover wine from turning into vinegar?
The best way to preserve open wine is to recork it immediately.
Okay.
And store it in the fridge. You can also use a vacuum stopper.
Oh, yeah.
Or an inert gas preserver to remove excess air from the bottle, which will slow down the oxidation process.
Okay, those sound like handy gadgets. I'll add those to my wish list. So we've covered sourcing. We've talked about storage. What other essential knowledge do we need to become true wine and coffee connoisseurs?
Well, we've discussed how to taste coffee and wine individually, but there's a whole world of flavor waiting to be discovered when you start pairing these beverages with food.
Ooh, pairing. Now we're talking. I love the idea of creating this symphony of flavors.
Yes.
But honestly, I'm a bit clueless when it comes to pairing. Where do we even begin?
Pairing coffee and wine with food is all about finding harmonious combinations that enhance both the beverage and the dish.
Oh, okay.
And just like with tasting, there are some guiding principles, but ultimately the best pairings are the ones that you enjoy the most.
Okay, so it's like a delicious adventure where we get to experiment and discover our own personal pairing preferences.
Exactly. Let's start with coffee. Have you ever thought about pairing your morning cup with something other than a donut or pastry?
To be honest, not really. But I'm open to expanding my coffee horizons. What kind of pairings are we talking about here?
Well, one approach is to look for complementary flavors.
Okay.
For example, the bitterness of a strong espresso can be beautifully balanced by the richness of dark chocolate. Or a smooth, nutty coffee might complement the creamy sweetness of a cheesecake.
Ooh, those sound amazing. So it's about finding flavors that work together, like a dynamic duo on the taste buds.
Exactly. You don't want one flavor to overpower the other. The goal is to create a harmonious balance where each element complements and enhances the other.
Okay.
And sometimes playing with contrasting flavors can create a delightful surprise. For example, a light acidic coffee can cut through the richness of a buttery pastry, highlighting both flavors.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
This is so cool. I'm starting to see how much potential there is for creativity in the world of coffee pairing. What about wine? Are there any hard and fast rules when it comes to pairing wine with food?
There are some classic guidelines, like pairing red wine with red meat and white wine with fish or chicken.
Right.
But even within those broad categories, there's a lot of room for experimentation and personal preference.
Right. So it's not just about matching the color of the wine to the protein on the plate.
Definitely not. The key is to think about the dominant flavors in both the food and the wine. For example, a rich, tannic Cabernet Sauvignon might pair well with a hearty steak,
Okay.
while a lighter Pinot Noir might be a better match for grilled salmon.
Okay, I'm starting to see the logic here, but I have to admit, sometimes those flavor combinations feel a bit like a guessing game. Are there any tips for making smarter pairing choices?
One helpful tip is to think about regional pairings. The idea is that, what grows together goes together.
I like that.
So if you're enjoying Italian cuisine,
Yeah.
you might try pairing it with an Italian wine.
Right.
Or if you're having a French meal,
Yeah.
explore the wines of France.
Right, that makes sense. It's like bringing a little bit of the region's terroir to the table, along with the food.
Exactly. And don't forget about the sauce or seasoning.
Yeah.
A tangy tomato sauce might call for a crisp, acidic white wine,
Okay.
like a Sauvignon Blanc,
Mm-hmm.
while a creamy Alfredo sauce might pair better with a richer, more buttery Chardonnay.
Okay, my taste buds are officially tingling. This is all so helpful. But what if I'm at a restaurant, staring at the wine list, and I just can't decide? Any advice for those moments of, wine-induced panic?
Don't be afraid to ask for recommendations.
Oh yeah, good point.
Sommeliers and wine stewards are trained to create harmonious pairings, and they're usually happy to offer suggestions based on your preferences and the menu.
That's a great point. It's like having a flavor expert on speed dial.
Okay, I think we've officially covered all the bases today, from the history of coffee and wine to tasting techniques, sourcing, storage, and even pairing. I feel like I could write a book now.
Well, maybe not a book, but you've definitely gained a solid foundation of knowledge.
I have. It's amazing.
And remember, this is just the beginning of your journey into the fascinating world of wine and coffee appreciation.
That's so true. The world of flavor is so vast and ever-evolving. There's always something new to discover, taste, and learn.
Absolutely.
So keep exploring, keep experimenting, and most importantly, keep enjoying those delicious sips. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Huge thank you to you. Passion with us today.
It's been my absolute pleasure.
And to all of our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've learned a few things, maybe debunked some myths, and most importantly, feel inspired to embark on your own flavor adventures.
And remember, if you're eager to delve even deeper into this fascinating world of wine and coffee, you can find all the source material we used for this episode on our Patreon.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on future episodes. Until next time, happy sipping.
And as always, remember, this is not professional advice, just a couple of friends sharing our love of all things coffee and wine. Cheers.
Thanks for being a listener. Click the card above to explore our playlist and find more episodes. And hey, if you really appreciate our work and want to help us keep creating awesome content, you can find us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/McAllister. Or if you just want to buy us a coffee, head over to buymecoffee.com/Jamie McAllister. All content, copyright Jamie McAllister.